And thank you so much for tuning into the Word and Praise podcast. My name, as always, is Aaron, and today I'm joined by two very special guests, Charlie Peacock and Andy Ashworth. How are you guys?
Good,
We're so
good.
good, Aaron. The sun is shining here. And
Yes,
that
yes.
feels
It may
good.
be February, it may be chilly, at least where I'm at, but we do have plenty of sunlight this week.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's helpful.
That's great.
You guys have written a book called Why Everything That Doesn't Matter Matters So Much.
Hmm.
And we're
Correct.
going to dive a little bit into that book today and kind of go kind of behind the scenes and where that came from and how everything came together to write that book. But we want to kick things off first with this is we're going into Super Bowl weekend.
Hmm.
And Charlie, you are a Kansas City Chiefs fan,
That's
as I
right.
understand it. So I have to ask, first of all, are you a lifelong Chiefs fan? Like, has this been like you've been with the team, ride and die?
I am not. Interestingly enough, growing up, I grew up in Northern California. So I was a 49ers fan for most of my life. And then when we moved to Tennessee, it wasn't too long after we got here, about a little less than 10 years, we took over the Houston Oilers, and became the Tennessee Titans.
Mm.
And we were box holders then, and or not box holders, we were seat holders. And we were really into it. And I found the inner sports fan in me. I'd spent so long establishing my artistry, I'd forgotten how much I love sports, and found that again, and was a pretty serious Titans fan for quite a while. And then I realized, oh, I'm a Fairweather fan, you know. I mean, really at the heart of it, I don't know how many years I can go, getting my heart broken, right? So, in fact, I was talking to a Bears fan the other night, and they were saying, "Hey, man, try to be a Bears fan over the last, whatever, 75 years." So I was like, "Well, yeah, but the Patrick Mahomes era started, and that changed everything for me because I was just completely sucked in by his artistry as a quarterback." And then one of my best friends is from Kansas City, and he's of course a huge Chiefs fan. And then it was sort of like, well, I think it makes it right that I'm going to go ahead and make the switch. And if last night's Grammys are any indication, with Taylor, becoming the most awarded album of the year uh, artist in history, then maybe there's a Chiefs win in our future here.
There could be. This is one of the Super Bowls where I I'm a lifelong Steelers fan. So
Mhm.
this is one of those
Well,
Super Bowls where I'm just sitting there going, I don't know who to root for because on one hand, I don't want the 49ers to get another Super Bowl. On the other hand, Patrick Mahomes has tore up the AFC since he came into the league, and
yeah.
I'm caught between a rock and a hard place on that
Yeah,
one.
you're a
So
you're a man without a home.
I am rooting for the commercials this year.
Well, that's what we will be doing too. I'll tell you an interesting thing is that our friends Steve and Deb Taylor, and you may remember Steve Taylor as well. And so they have an annual Super Bowl party, and we'll be going to that. And so
Okay.
you'll have a whole bunch of artists, um, and sports fans sitting in a room critiquing the commercials, which is always fun.
Yeah, to think about that, with all the artistry in the room, like you just said, it definitely gives a different perspective when you watch TV or anything that's produced.
Well, that's right. And there'll be several filmmakers there too. So they'll know all the
Oh
technical
man.
part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough audience, is what I'm
And
saying. But
someone's sitting there going, all right, they used this shot here, and then they went into the
exactly.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, for us radio folk, that's how it is when you listen to the radio with us in the room is we'll sit there and we'll start saying, "Oh man, that was a good break.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got right out at 90 and went
Yeah.
right into that was a nice smooth transition." And people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's we get together a couple times a year in the industry, and it's always a good time because we talk about things like that, and then you hear different
Mhm.
things going on. So, but let's
Yeah,
get into this book and kind of give me a rundown. This is a collection of letters
that's right. Yeah.
to Christians in different
Mhm.
circumstances or in different walks of life.
That's
Mm.
right. Yeah,
What can
that's
you
right.
tell me
That's
about the
good.
book?
Yeah. I love that you picked up on the letters part. And
Mhm.
do you want to share a bit about
Sure. The
why the
letters,
letters?
yeah, the letters came from, we had been a family of people who wrote letters to each other. And we started when our
We are a
kids,
family.
yeah, we are still, but it started when our kids were still at home and they're, both in their 40s. So that seems like a long time ago, but we would once a year write letters to each other that were just, loving and encouraging and saying, I see this in you. I love this about you. We see these gifts in you. And we would read those letters out loud to each other once a year at a Valentine's meal. So move forward in time, we've done that we just kept doing that in our family. We did it as recently as last year, adding in grandkids, and it's pretty moving. But we started a tradition with our grandchildren of writing letters to them on their 13th birthday.
Mm.
And those letters said things like, we see you, your loving kindness, your affectionate ways, the way your gifts of art and design and writing. And to another, we would say, we see and hear your beautiful, strong singing voice, your love for books, your joy and skill with baking. Another child, that would be about his brave, adventuresome spirit and his athletic gifts. And we're just about to be at the 13th birthday point with our youngest grandchild.
Mhm.
And she's really looking forward to it. But so we have the book is full of stories and reflections from, as you said, all these different diverse places of the life that we've lived, but they're outward focused in the form of letters.
Yeah, but they are in the spirit of what Andy was just saying. They're very familial
Yeah.
and love centric and care centric, and just saying, look, we see you. Like, for example, I might be speaking to musicians and music lovers, and I'm saying, hey, I see you. I mean, I know something about you. We've been in family together in a sense, for 40 plus years, and here's some of my thoughts on this particular part of how we interact together, right?
Mm,
And one of those chapters is called the Christian Name Game. And it's about naming things Christian. And it's about when it's good and right and really profitable to the church to name things Christian. And when there are times when you name things Christian, you limit them not because of Christ, but you limit them because we have something called Christian music as a genre, right?
mm,
Which is something that you all are involved in with your radio station. But you're
right?
very explicit about it. And you're, in other words, you're telling your listener, this is what we do here. If you would like to come and this is the thing that you're interested in, then we're going to name it as such so that you know that. In the same way that, you don't go into um, a restaurant looking to purchase a crescent wrench, it's helpful to use language that directs people to where they want to go. But
Mm,
on the other hand, if someone like me, who I make a lot of different kinds of music, right? So I do jazz, I do symphonic music. I'm one of the people that creates the music for Facebook and Instagram. I'm involved in a lot of different things, including serving the church through music. So if a person only sees me as a Christian musician who contributes to music for your radio station, then and I get in a sense pigeonholed doing that, then it limits what God has actually called me to.
Mm,
And these are the kinds of things that we dive deep into that are like, oh, okay, now I see. Now I see what you're trying to tell us there. And sort of gently open up some of these big ideas that we all interact with, but maybe don't have the time to really take to see like, oh, if I really if I invested 30 minutes in this subject, it could change the whole course of my life.
mm.
These ideas are big enough that they could really redirect me in ways that are positive and very Jesus centric.
Wow. So, it's like you go in and you kind of open up that, hey, there is a bigger picture here.
Right.
And
Exactly.
you're in one area and maybe you can only see down, your tour and speaking as far as musicians go, being
Yeah.
that, that's where our focus is. Um, maybe you're just focused on your tour and the next show, the next city, the next break. But God has this overall greater picture like, hey, you're going to do this for a time, but there's a time after this. So there's a time where it's going to evolve into something else. And who better than
Exactly.
you, Charlie, who, you know, uh, I've gone through and, of course I know In the White, right. And other
Mhm.
songs and gone back through and listened. And you, like you said, you've been doing this for 40 years.
Right.
Um, who better than an artist who's like, hey, that's what I used to see, but there's so much more at the end. There's not an end.
Exactly.
It just continues.
Yes, that's right. And even this too, that this isn't always the case, but if
Mm,
you were to go through your playlist right now, you would have a median age group, right? Where you'd say, okay, most of the artists that we play are between the ages of, you know, 18 and 38 or something, right?
right.
And Christian music has traditionally been a music made by younger people, right? So we are in our 60s, and where we're at in life is really we may listen to your radio station, but we also might be hungry for the music of our youth, and we might listen to that. Or we might be in a period of time where we're like, who are the new young artists in the world? Or for
Mhm,
me, I might be saying, hey, who's making the really experimental, really left of center music that people aren't listening to yet, but is forecasting the future?
mhm.
So I might be interested in that. But I won't find that on your radio station, will I?
Probably not. We have a
Right. And
variety,
that's
but
okay. That's not a negative thing. What I'm saying
right.
is
No,
I'm
no, we
playing
have
off
a.
your point that
You're right.
the world that Jesus has entrusted to us is massive. And the ideas that he's entrusted to us is massive, right? And we can have these lanes that we work, and they can be practical and they can be helpful to people, but they're never the one story, right? Like
Right.
so I have always said, hey, be supportive of Christian music, but never ever think that American Christian music defines the music made by Christians throughout the world, throughout
Mm.
all generations.
It's so easy to put us in that little box, right? We're in our own little world. I think, especially in the United States, where we're kind. It's weird to say cut off from the rest of the world, but at the same time,
Mhm.
we have so much and so much available to us that it's hard to find people in this country who are aware of, hey, who's the big Christian artist or worship artist and in Europe or in Italy or these
Yeah,
other
in
um
Senegal or wherever.
right,
Yeah.
right, wherever they're making music and however that
Yeah.
sounds, because there's a good bet that it's going to sound different than what is on our air.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, One of the things that the book is clearly about is us as writers. And many of your listeners would know music that I've written or produced, right? And so they would know this musical side to us. both Andy and I have been writers since we were kids, and we
Mm,
love writing. Writing is a way that we not only discover ourselves, but discover the world. It's a way that we process theological ideas, bring them into the day to day. And I'd love to hear you share a little bit about the writing life and what that's meant to you.
Mm. Yes, well, as Charlie said, we've both been writing since before we knew each other. We met when we were 15 and 16 years old, but we already had a history of we loved books, we loved to read. I had begun writing in journals, and that is a practice that has stayed with me and just grown and grown throughout my whole entire life. More of an archivist and reflective journal. So I have at this point about, I think it's 52 journals of just the stories of our life. So it's kind of like history books, right? But then we've both written books and lots of articles, and, so this is the first time we've come together and written a book together.
Mhm.
And we each trade off, each chapter trades off
mhm,
between the two of us. So we write about, kind of just the great variety of what our life has been, but in a reflective way that you can only do when you're in your 60s and have had time to
Yeah.
have experienced some, redemption and reconciliation of all sorts with,
Yeah.
inside of families or even with parents or between each other. And kind of to take the whole of life and see it as each person has a life that they're given. And there are threads that are some threads, occupy more of our time than others, but it's the whole of the whole thing. Um, that and then all of it matters. So there's not just some of it that matters and other parts that don't. So we do try to really bring that out into the light
Mhm.
because we've thought about that so much, and it has really mattered in us being faithful to the life God's given us, is to recognize, the details as well as the larger things, or the
yeah,
life we've been called to.
right. And you said a couple things too. So the first thing is your style of writing is, if I read some of the material correctly, is you're a diarist,
Hmm.
right? So, which is that reflective
Yeah.
journaling style writing, which is
Yeah.
very interesting. I'm not certainly I work in radio. I am definitely not an English major at all. And writing is not my forte, although
Mm.
in my job I do have to do it for production reasons, you know.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's always interesting to talk to the people where that's their creative process lies, and where their gift is in writing. Because the other thing that you said was being able to be reflective at 60, um, means you have more of a complete view of experiences of life, whether it's something that you've lived or something that you've observed, and you've had time to not only observe that and live it, but then to reflect on the who, what, why, when,
Mm.
all those aspects of any given situation. And
That's right,
for
Aaron.
Yeah.
That's
me,
good.
I can relate because I'm in my mid 30s and I'm back in school, studying again. And I have
Hmm.
found that for some courses where it deals with personal stories or life, or, looking at certain situations, it's become so much easier because I'm coming into it with experiences, whether I'm taking
Yeah.
Mhm.
a management class or whether it's,
Right.
talking about spiritual formation, if you will.
Mhm.
At 18, I don't know. I'm 18. I had my parents' church, my parents' faith. And now at 36, it's like, oh no, let's talk about this because there's been life lived, there's been experiences, there's been
Right.
highs, there's been lows. You've had to trust in God and you've had to rely on certain things. Um, and then putting those letters in here, it feels like this is kind of a book for people too who are possibly even seeking, the title alone, why everything
Hmm.
that doesn't matter matters so much.
Hmm.
I think when people say, oh, that doesn't matter, you almost have someone who's seeking, like, well, what does matter?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as it turns out, everything matters.
Mm,
And there's no neutrality. I mean, this is at the heart of the gospel, is that there's no neutrality in life. We're either moving towards the gospel or away from it.
mm,
And that's what we want to encourage people. There's nothing about this book that is about perfection, about getting everything right, or even judgment. Hopefully it's a book where people will enter into a real freedom of grace. But we look at the stuff that we all deal with. I mean, it's everything from marriage to parenting to being sick and suffering, um, to issues for all of us, like how we want to be creative in our life. What is it we want to make? Not just from an art position, but really from a life position. What is the life that we hope to make, and how do we hope to make it? And where is that resource coming from? And where is our energy coming from, and our ambition coming from? And we hope that we're giving people the why, which for us is like the Jesus' summary,
mm,
love of God and neighbor. I mean, that's
mm,
why we do everything. When you break it down, um, certainly reading the Bible can be a complex endeavor, but the summary of the law that Jesus gave of love of God and neighbor is pretty simple.
mm,
And that's what drives us in everything that we do, whether we're writing or whether we're um, trying to dream up something fun to do with our grandkids, or whether we're dealing with a very, very difficult, thorny subject, you know, and especially writing in public. I mean, being public persons who take your ideas, thoughts, songs, books, whatever it is, out into the public square, that can be a huge challenge. Um, you guys in your work, you go out on the airwaves, right? And where the whole world can listen in. And we believe that whether we're doing something explicitly Christian in terms of Christian community, or whether we're down at the grocery store, we believe that the whole world is looking over our shoulder. They are looking at what we're writing and speaking, and so we want to do it in such a way so that there's really not a difference between the way that we talk with you, on an explicit Christian radio station, and the way we talk with our neighbor.
mm,
um, we're hoping to continue to grow and learn in that way. And I think, Andy, you can speak to this too, but we've tried to do in this book is write in such a way that, Aaron, you could read this book, but you could also give it to a neighbor who doesn't yet follow Christ
mm,
and say, here's some Christians that I trust that have spent some time thinking about these things, and this might be helpful to you.
mm. Yeah, and man, it's such a good point, because that is, I think, really important too, when you have people who have that, been Christians and have that great foundation, and then to share that, because you said the laws that Jesus gave us, love God and love neighbor. He also gave us the greatest, I think, command in the Bible too, which is go and
Yeah.
make disciples, right? That great commission call, which is what sharing the gospel, or even sharing a book like this with a neighbor is. And not only that, but saying, hey, you can trust this. You can trust that this isn't trying to sell you on some, happy-go-lucky God, or Christianity where everything's rosy. And you
Mm.
know, we know and believe that, hey, being a Christian means we still live life, and we're gonna have those highs again, we're gonna have those lows, right?
Mhm.
But walking through it, we have a hope, because we know we have a future in God. So no matter what happens, good, bad, ugly, we can rest assured that we are loved and we are cared for by a maker who can't wait to have us back in his presence again, and we can't wait to be in his.
Mm. Right.
as we go through the book too, you know, it's about different types of people, whether they're artists or whatever, you really go into vocation here.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
let
it's very much a book about vocation. Yeah.
yeah. So I do want to kind of hear about um why that's so important for you guys.
Tackle
Thanks.
that.
Sure. Yeah, Aaron, when I was in my 40s, and now I'm 68 right now, so when I was in my early 40s, I began to just wonder, what does that word mean? What does vocation mean? What does calling mean? What does it mean when people use it? Is it just for, a few people? Is it a word that pastors or musicians can use and, not very many other people? So I went on a search back in those days and just really learned that vocation is a word for everyone that takes in really the whole scope of your life from your, for me, it would be, I did a lot of work. We had lived in a very open, radically open home called the Art House in Nashville. And so we hosted people all the time. I cooked for people all the time. We were raising children. We had music being made on the property. There were just all these different things going on. Then there was the writing part. There was all the small parts, the big parts. And I thought, how do I make sense of all this? And then I learned the word vocation, calling, like we're in the scriptures is speaking to us in the whole of our life.
Mm.
But obviously, God has given us different, each person unique gifts, unique places to be, to live, people to be with. And so I learned to understand that I had these big threads, which were, I would sum it up as people. So I was caring for people all the time. And that could be everything from my family to our guests to, you know, friendships. And then there was the place element, which was to tend a place. And that is something that I did a lot of, but I'd already done it as a mother and a wife. And I do it now. And then there was for me, caring for words was a big part of it. So there are these big threads, but then there's I have a vocation as a grandmother. I have a vocation as a mother. I have a vocation as a writer. All of it fits together in this big puzzle. And so it was very, very helpful to understand that you have these umbrella things, but then you have all this that fits underneath so that you can know that, let's say if you are, you know, you have some kind of a vocation like I did in hospitality, then the pulling weeds in the garden, the washing of the dishes, the creating of the food, uh, the cleaning up before people and behind people, sitting for long hours of conversation, all those things are part of it. It all matters.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
What
that's
what
why it was so important to me to
yeah.
get that straight.
And I would tag on to that saying, especially that last list that she just laid out, things that people would sometimes call mundane.
Mm.
What Andy's doing is she's saying, no, they're all part of a whole, right? And they're
Mhm.
all necessary. They're not always attractive. They're not always things we want to do. We want to move on to other things and do them, but they are part of the whole. And and so when people are trying to sort out their identity and trying to sort out, why does anything matter? Like if I pull the weeds in front of my front door, does that matter? Well, I think so, yes, because I think if you're making a place, if you're the steward over your place and your idea is that I want the first impression when people come up to my place is to feel order or peace or
Beauty.
beauty, or just even to see that a loving hand touched something and cared for it. All of those things add together from the moment you open that door and walk through the threshold, right? They can all be part of one whole so that people, after they've spent time with you, can say, I'm so glad I came here. I feel refreshed because I came here, because I visited with you, because I received your hospitality. And that way, vocationally, they are all part of this huge whole of being a representative of Jesus to your neighbors, to the whole world, right? Caring about the same things that Jesus cares about. And while we've put tremendous, and important emphasis on a lot of big theological concepts, this whole idea that why everything that doesn't matter matters so much is that, well, you know what? If Jesus really is the agency of all creation, then all of creation matters to Jesus. And therefore, as Jesus's disciple, all of creation matters to us.
Mhm.
Wow. It's such a book of, I mean, it's a book of encouragement. You have the letters, you want people to be encouraged, but it's not even just the non-Christian bringing someone to Christ. It's the person who's been walking the path and bringing them in. As you were saying that about um, the mundane things, pulling the weeds, the things that don't seemingly matter. I was thinking of you have the three parables in Luke, right? You have the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son. I believe it's Luke. Oh boy, if I'm wrong, I'm I'm in trouble. But it just brought me back to that, someone who has 10 coins loses one, and she goes through the house, she lights a lamp and rejoices when she finds the one. Well, she had nine other coins. I mean, how much was one really gonna make a lasting
Make it or break it,
impact?
huh? Yeah.
Right. But it's that important, and something seemingly meh has that much value. And of course, it goes on to say, so is such rejoicing over one sinner who repents.
Right.
Um, Paraphrasing, of course. So, and just to see that kind of back and forth right there. This really is a powerful kind of really deep book in the form of letters, which I think everyone can, who doesn't like to get a letter, right?
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
it
That's a
Yes.
also
good point.
it also reminds me of some books that came out, I think originally in the 1930s. And it was a series of almost letters from God called God Calling. And of course, they've
Mm.
done different variations of that over the
Hmm.
years.
Yeah.
Um, but this is slightly different than that, but it's that letter format of just saying, hey, you here in this, whether it's vocation or situation, here's what we have for you. But this is coming from the heart of you and Andy. So you guys wrote this, you took turns. So you guys wrote this kind of separately and then brought it all together, or how did that come about?
That's right. Yeah, we each had individual ideas for chapters, and we had a lot that got culled down to kind of our greatest hits, things that we've thought a lot about and written about over the years. And so naturally, Andy would write about things like why bother learning to cook and hospitality and writing, um, and just the kind of um, really substantive care that she's given to all of life. And naturally, I would write about music, and I would write about a theology of artistry and imagination and creativity. And so we did have those things that we kind of majored in, but then we had a lot of overlap too, where one of her chapters, I might build on it and vice versa. So there's a lot of interwoven ideas there. And then and then we have a little bit of collab between, our first chapter and last chapter. Um, and it's really, I think our editor did a really great job in helping us shape the material, and make it cohesive. And it's even just beginning with the opening chapter of being on the lookout for redemption, and then ending with the because she really saw us as being people who were just further down the road. We're all on the same road, but maybe just because of our age and experience, we're a little further down the road. And so I used to tell people that artists are like, because I'm from the West, and I would always tell people, well, artists are like the scouts that go ahead of the wagon train, right?
Mm,
And they ride 5 miles ahead and check everything out, and then they come back and they tell everybody, "Hey, it's safe ahead," or "There's danger," right?
mm,
And I've always felt like that's one of the roles of artists in society, and I think that that's what we've tried to do with this hope from further down the road is that because we've gone ahead of some of our readers and listeners, and even you, we're at the stage of life that you're in, we can speak to some things and we can come back and report in and
mm.
say, these are our notes, from
Field notes.
field notes from our scouting trip. And here's what we'd like to share with you.
You're coming up on this point in life. Here, let me share with you what we went through at
Yeah.
this point in life. I mean, those that is a resource, though. I mean, certainly for someone who's open to accepting that, for someone who wants to say, you know what have other people learned from choices that maybe are similar at this stage of life, and where do those go? Or maybe someone who's afraid to walk into opportunity, and
Mm.
you have
Yeah.
someone who's been there who's like, hey,
Yeah.
here's why I
Yeah.
would, and here's why I wouldn't, and here's what I did.
Yeah. Andy
uh,
wrote a chapter to that. And uh, knowing when it's time to move, is that?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that was about, yeah, that
But
was
I mean,
about
but as to those
kind
considering a
of
big change, I mean,
discerning
certainly
when it's time to
applies.
mhm.
move from one big thing to another.
Yeah.
And also,
And
I think, yeah,
discernment is a huge topic, but go ahead, Andy.
yeah, it made me think, what Chuck was saying, made me think that we all need to know we're not alone, right? We need to hear other people's stories to know
Yeah.
we're not alone.
Mhm.
So we have a chapter on to those on the long road of marriage, and it's vulnerable and it's honest, and it's just saying you're not alone. But it's hard. Here are some of our stories that are
Yeah.
very, very hard and very, very joyful and redemptive, but still on, but no perfection, only proximity, lots of grace, only grace.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think there's that component, whether in any of our chapters, is to say, no, we're not alone. You're not alone. And that's
Yeah,
important. We need each other.
absolutely. I tell the story of a lot of the story of my father and I, and we had a we had a good but too often rocky relationship, and I know a lot of your listeners will be able to relate to that. It's amazing thing when we have a lasting, beautiful relationship with our parents, and it's can be really heartbreaking when it's not that, and it can really change the course of your life, and to take your whole lifetime to deal with it. And that's one of the subjects that we tackle as well.
So why everything that doesn't matter matters so much? When are we expecting this out? This is coming out here soon.
March 12th.
March
March.
12th, and pre-order is going on right now. So
Okay,
anywhere books are sold, you
that
can
was the next
pre-order.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah, anywhere books
yeah,
are
I
sold.
mean, we are We are idealists and realists. You know, we love for people to support their local small bookstore. And we also know that there's this giant behemoth that controls most of the books sold in the world now. And you know, it also matters to for people to pick up the book there, because interestingly enough, um, so many of the smaller retailers look to the big box and the big digital online retailers to take their cue on what to order.
Mm.
So it all works together. You know, we're agnostic. We just want you to have it in your hands.
Yeah, but March 12th is release day and pre-order happening right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And certainly, if you guys, anyone who is in the area that's watching or listening to this, certainly check in with the Christian bookstore in Suffolk. I know they've had several great titles, and they've been a great
Very good. Yeah.
partner with the radio station here. So be
Well,
sure to
Excellent.
I'm sure they'll
hit
carry
them
it.
up and tell them that you want to get that Charlie Peacock and Andy Ashworth book.
That's right.
Charlie, Andy, it has been such a privilege to be able to talk with you guys and to share this time together. Thank you so much for doing what God has called you guys to do. And I can't wait to see what comes out of this next. And Charlie, you've been just before we close out here. So you obviously were in music really heavy in the 80s. You're still heavy in music because you work for Meta, Facebook, and you do their music. Anything else you're working on music wise in the
Well, I'm always creating music, and I'm working on a film right now called Stage Left, which is about the importance of the small venue and the creation of the American music canon, from gospel to blues to rock and
Mm.
jazz and hip hop, um and then I have my um, podcast that I do with CT Media. It's called Music and Meaning, and that's available everywhere. Um, the last episode is on Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who I consider to be the founder of gospel rock, and we've also did an imaginary show with Saint Augustine, and he and I listened in on the top 40 and commented on the lyrics of the top 40. And then I've also um, took a deep dive into my signing of the band Switchfoot and told the story
Mhm.
of that. So there's a lot of interesting music related topics there, and
Yeah.
would invite your listeners to check out that podcast, Music and Meaning.
Music and Meaning. Yeah, be sure to
Yeah.
check it out. Same as the Word and Praise podcast. Anywhere you get your podcasts is where you can get it. Thanks, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. If you are local to the Hampton Roads area, 89.1, the Word and Praise. Everywhere across the globe, the Word and Praise app, which you can find on the App Store and Google Play. Until next time, guys, I'm Aaron. Have a great day.
Thank you, Aaron.